Of all the games anyone expected to get a remake, the ancient SNES novelty Actraiser probably isn't one of them. But surprise, here it is, back from the dead 30 years later. Actraiser Renaissance is a lot of things. It's a 2D side-scroller, it's a city builder, it's a god game, it's a tower defense. But it's kind of like a proto version of all these things. It has the basic ideas behind all of these different genres, but that's all that it has. Despite multiple updates like entirely new game mechanics and an expanded narrative, this is a game that still really shows its age. That despite being perfectly respectable on its own merits, other games have since come along and built on what it did to the point where it feels fairly bog standard looking back today. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're liberating mankind from the clutches of the Dark Lord in Actraiser Renaissance. I know I said that Actraiser Renaissance is a game that hasn't aged the most gracefully, but let's not leap straight to the doom and gloom, because there are some aspects of this game that have actually aged pretty well. For a SNES game, Actraiser moves pretty good. Yeah, sure, the graphics are a little bit clunky, but this game gets a surprising amount of mileage out of its pretty limited suite of moves, and moving around is both surprisingly smooth and intuitive for a 30-year-old game. The level design itself still works all these years later and is actually surprisingly atmospheric. There's a nice mix of light platforming challenges, exploration, and combat. There's pretty impeccable enemy placement to take advantage of each opponent's unique attack pattern, and the bosses are all pretty fun to fight so long as they're not taking half my health bar away when they decide to suddenly start walking backwards with zero warning. Nothing I just said is particularly revolutionary for a game to do, but all of these basics are executed excellently and make for a perfectly entertaining little jaunt. And each level only runs you like 10 minutes before you're on to the next one. You're on to something new and usually even cooler well before you ever have the time to get bored of the old stuff. The only real complaint I have about the side-scrolling half of Actraiser is when you have to go destroy a monster nest, which... I mean, I guess they're there, and they're over in less than 60 seconds? But beyond that, Actraiser might not be doing anything to stand out here, but it does do everything it needs to do to be baseline fun. There's not a whole ton to say about it, but if you like some old-school side-scrolling action, it'll scratch the itch. It's an absolute tragedy, however, that this pretty light and nifty little 2D action platformer that is legitimately fun is forced to bookend a second game 3 times its size that is aged significantly worse. Instead of running around dungeons giving monsters what for, you spend the vast majority of your time on the screen playing a sort of proto-city builder/god game. As mankind begins to try and tame the monster-riddled wilderness, it's up to you to help them expand, defend their homes from local threats, and generally maintain their society like a well-kept bonsai tree. Unfortunately, this mode is more restrictive than a straitjacket. It tasks you with the open-ended mission of developing a town on this big inviting map, then immediately turns around and dictates to you exactly what direction to develop the town in. Exhibit A, your town is regularly plagued by monsters that spawn periodically from monster dens, and you can expand your town outwards to eventually remove this threat. But you have to remove them in a specific order, and you're only allowed to do so when the game tells you to do it. And this extends down to literally every choice you can make in this mode, from when to use your godly powers to the completely automated construction of the town itself. City builders work either as strategic challenges for your management chops, or as blank canvases for creative expression, but Actraiser's management game provides neither. It's not even worth calling a puzzle. The game's already decided exactly what's going to happen and where you're allowed to go every step of the way, and even tells you what to do every 30 seconds. The game's already been played for you, and you're just the hired gardener here to keep its hedges trimmed. And you know, I'm willing to accept that this might just be a symptom of Actraiser's age. This game literally came out a year after SimCity and was developed halfway across the world from it besides, which means they'd probably already started work on the game before one of its genre's biggest cornerstones laid the foundation for how the genre worked. And with that context, I'm willing to cut Actraiser some slack and just say it's a product of its time, that it came out at a moment when we were still figuring out the genre and nothing short of a total overhaul would have saved it. But for anyone revisiting it in 2021, its primary appeal is academic, for if you want to see a weird, short-lived branch of the tree that might have been the trunk in another universe. Actraiser itself seems to be aware of this fact, as the city building mode's most engaging moments all stem from an all-new addition, the tower defense mode labeled Sieges. Seamlessly incorporated into the larger city-building metagame are periodic missions that see you having to defend your fledgling town with a combination of static defenses and roving hero units as monsters assault it from all sides, popping out of the wilderness to wander and terrorize the streets in proper tower defense pathfinding fashion. It is a little rudimentary, but hey, at least there's a game here at all. Still, it has issues of its own. Here again, the game is infuriatingly restrictive, only allowing you to place defensive structures like gatehouses and barricades in a very select few, almost arbitrary-feeling locations, and rarely did these spots line up with where I actually wanted to place a building. What I found even more personally grating, however, was the fact that you can't reconstruct your city's layout. You can move some of those aforementioned barricades around, but critically, I can't seem to find a way to remove sections of the city wholesale. Every single time I started a new map, without fail, I would start expanding my city only to discover monsters spawning in an awkward spot right in the heart of it, where they could wander off in a half-dozen different directions. And never once was I allowed to rework the structure of my city to try and contain common monster hotspots or funnel them toward my defenses, forcing me to make really awkward stopgap measures like this mess of turrets. Once again, this could have been another way Actraiser could have given its city-building elements even the slightest hint of strategic or artistic self-expression, and the game stubbornly refuses to give me any. Rounding out this section of the game is the narrative. Actraiser features just enough of a plot to warrant a small footnote. Along with every town you painstakingly nurture, you'll get a narrative following that region's hero, each faced with their own boilerplate internal dilemma that they have to get over before they save the day. But unfortunately, it's nothing to really write home about. What's there is executed with perfect competency, but if you've watched an anime for 20 minutes at any point in your life, you'll pretty much know this game's story beat for beat. It's effortless and inoffensive to flip through, but also not what to come to the game for. But alright, let's get to the big question. What do you get out of 5 hours with Actraiser Renaissance? 5 hours got me just shy of halfway through the game, having brought me close to completing the third of 6 regions. Tragically, however, as I already noted, the bulk of that time is spent doing Actraiser's chore list in the city building mode, while the fun part, the action side-scroller, only ever shows up for 10 minutes at a time. This is a double tragedy, because according to How Long to Beat, the original Actraiser was formerly just 5 hours in totality, and much of that runtime discrepancy got packed onto this less interesting mode, creating a bloated product that's not very respectful of your time. Despite having never played the original Actraiser, I can't help but feel like time has not been particularly kind to this game. This is a title that feels like it might have once been something really special, but falls into a common trap where what might have felt innovative back in 1990 has just become bog standard today, 3 decades later. Actraiser seems to be aware of this fact even, and the most surprising part of this remake is that they actually had the guts to make significant updates to the game to try and rectify the issue. And these updates are almost all universally for the better, but they're just not enough to spice up Actraiser's core loop. Overall, I think that it's a perfectly reasonable game that was lucky enough to get an actually decent remaster. But despite those efforts to modernize the game, you still only get to experience flashes of greatness amidst a sea of fairly banal and simple gameplay. Hey, by the way, I've got a Patreon. If you enjoyed the video enough to get all the way here, you should go throw money at it. But thank you for watching all the way through. I hope you enjoyed this review of Actraiser Renaissance, and I'll see you all next time.